The weight of loneliness hits. Differently when you're holding your child's hand in a hospital corridor. Marcus Ashford had felt it countless times over the past 5 years, that suffocating realization that all the money in the world couldn't buy back the life his son had before the accident. 8-year-old James lay in a pediatric facility 3 times a week for physical therapy, his small frame struggling against limitations that Marcus would have given everything to erase. The sound of his son's frustrated cries echoed in Marcus's chest long after he left each day, a constant reminder of his failure to protect him from the speeding car that had changed everything. Marcus had built a software empire from nothing, climbing from a cramped apartment to a penthouse in downtown Seattle. He dated beautiful women, made powerful friends, and lived a life most people only dreamed of. But none of it mattered now. His company practically ran itself, managed by capable executives who didn't need him present. So he made the decision that shocked everyone. He stepped back. Not fully. He couldn't let go of the business entirely. Not when it provided the resources James needed, but enough to be there. Except he couldn't be everywhere. He needed help. The nanny interviews had been exhausting. Woman after woman walked into his home, eyes gleaming at the salary he'd offered, $60,000 a year, which was generous even for Seattle. They asked about benefits, insurance, time off. They smiled at James with a practiced warmth that made Marcus's chest tighten with distrust. When he mentioned that James had cerebral palsy, several of their smiles faltered. One actually asked if the disability was severe enough to warrant that level of pay. By the 7th interview, Marcus was prepared to hire someone merely adequate. He was tired, defeated, and James needed consistent care while he handled the unavoidable. Business meetings he couldn't delegate. Then Sarah Chen walked in. She was younger than he, expected, maybe late 20s, with kind eyes and a resume that made no sense for the position. Harvard graduate, nursing degree, 3 years of experience at Johns Hopkins, working with children with complex medical needs. She was overqualified by every measure. When Marcus asked why she wanted to work as a nanny for a single income, when she could earn considerably more in hospital settings, her answer was simple. "I burned out," she said quietly, sitting across from him with her hands folded. "I was good at my job, Mr. Ashford, but I was saving lives from 9 to 5 and forgetting to live them the rest of the time. I missed knowing my patients as people, not case numbers. I missed having time to really care." Something in her voice told him she meant it. So he hired her. The first 2 weeks were careful, professional, almost formal. Sarah arrived at 7 in the morning and stayed until Marcus returned by 6. She helped James with breakfast, drove him to therapy, managed his medications with meticulous precision, but she kept a polite distance. And Marcus told himself that was exactly what he wanted: efficiency, competence, nothing more. Then something shifted. Marcus had installed cameras throughout the house, not out of distrust, but out of the paranoia that comes with having a child with special needs and the knowledge that he couldn't protect him from everything. He monitored them periodically, the responsible parent's version of checking a security system. One afternoon, stuck in a conference call at his office, he found himself opening the feed from James's bedroom. What he saw stopped his heart. James was having what looked like a difficult day. Marcus could recognize the signs. His son sat in his wheelchair, his little frame tensed with frustration, tears streaming down his face. They came often now, these waves of anger and sadness that overcame him when his body wouldn't cooperate. Marcus had seen it hundreds of times, had sat with his son through it, holding him while he cried for everything he'd lost. It never got easier. But Sarah was doing something unexpected. She wasn't trying to distract him or talk him down from it. Instead, she sat on the floor in front of the wheelchair, eye level with James, and simply cried with him. Marcus leaned closer to the screen, watching as his nanny, this woman he barely knew, let tears stream down her own face. Her lips were moving. She was saying something. He turned up the volume on his computer, his hands shaking slightly. "I know this is so hard," Sarah was saying, her voice thick with genuine emotion. "I know your body is doing things you don't want it to do. And that's the most unfair thing in the world. You have every right to be angry. You have every right to cry." She reached out and held James's hand, not to comfort him in that patronizing way some adults did, but as one person offering solidarity to another. "But do you know something?" she continued, wiping her own eyes. "You're the bravest person I've ever met. Not because you never cry. Brave people cry. Brave people feel things deeply. You're brave because you keep going anyway. Every single day you show up and you try. And you don't give up even when it would be easier to. That makes you a hero in my book." James's crying seemed to ease slightly. Sarah continued to sit with him. Not trying to fix anything, not offering platitudes. She was just there, authentically present, letting her genuine care spill out onto the floor of his bedroom. Marcus felt something break open inside his chest. He watched as Sarah began to hum softly, and slowly, so slowly, he saw his son's body relax. She asked if he wanted to paint, if he wanted to sit by the window, if he wanted to tell her a story. When he wanted to sit in silence, she sat in silence with him, their hands still connected. Over the next week, Marcus found excuses to check the cameras. He told himself it was security protocol, but really, he was bearing witness to something remarkable. He saw Sarah taking James into the backyard and setting up a sensory garden, letting him touch different textures and experience different scents. He saw her modifying games so that James could participate fully. He saw her crying again, tears of joy this time, when James achieved a small victory with his physical therapy. Tears that matched the genuine pride in her eyes. What struck Marcus most wasn't the technical excellence of her care, though she was excellent. It was the love, untethered, unguarded, deeply authentic love for a child who wasn't hers, whom she'd only just met. One evening, Marcus found himself still at the office when he should have gone home. He looked at his phone. James would be in bed soon. Then he looked at the camera feed one more time. Sarah sat on the edge of James's bed, reading a story with animated voices that made his son giggle in the darkness. When she finished the chapter, she leaned down and kissed his forehead, a gesture so tender it broke something in Marcus's heart all over again. That night, when Sarah was leaving, Marcus did something he hadn't done in years. He cried. Not the controlled, private tears he allowed himself in his car, but real cleansing, overwhelming tears. Sarah found him in the kitchen, overwhelmed and raw. "I saw," he told her through his tears. "I saw how you are with him. I've been looking at the camera feeds and I saw everything. The way you sit with him, the way you listen, the way you love him. I don't have words to thank you for that. I don't have enough money to compensate you for what you're giving him." Sarah walked over and did something that shocked him. She hugged him. Not professionally, not carefully. She held him while he cried, this man who had everything and had felt so alone. "Mr. Ashford," she said quietly, "I don't do this for money. I do this because James is remarkable, and he deserves to be seen as remarkable. And you do too, for fighting so hard to be the father he needs." In that moment, Marcus understood something fundamental about being human. It wasn't about the penthouse or the portfolio. It was about showing up for someone else so completely that you both became more than you were alone. Sarah had burned out in a prestigious hospital because she'd lost sight of that. Marcus had been burning out in his success because he'd forgotten that too. He raised Sarah's salary 40% that week, not as compensation for what he'd witnessed, but as recognition that she was teaching him how to live again. More importantly, he started putting down his phone during afternoons with James. He stopped checking the cameras. Instead, he sat on the floor with his son, learning from Sarah how to be present, how to cry when tears were needed, and how to find joy in the smallest victories. James would face a lifetime of challenges, but watching his son laugh with Sarah in the backyard on Saturday mornings, Marcus understood that the greatest gift he could give his son wasn't money or protection from pain. It was the example of how to meet hardship with an open heart, and how to recognize kindness when it appears, often in the most unexpected form. Sarah had shown them both that the true measure of a person isn't what they can do, but how fully they show up for others. And in learning that lesson, Marcus Ashford became richer than he'd ever been.